Oh,
It-
it's starting.
okay.
Hey everyone, we are so excited to be live with you guys here at Around the Table with Two Chef Mission. Of course, you guys that have been following us know that we are Two Chef Mission. I'm Chef Tony,
I'm Melissa.
and we wanted to be able to do this live to really kind of get into answering your questions and kind of
Hmm.
getting into more of an area of providing extra service for you guys that are here in this
Hmm.
group.
Yeah, also basically so that we can get to know a bit more on what parts of meal planning that we can assist you on and at where you guys are at or like what you need sort of thing. So more of a supportive role so that we can base things on what you guys want to see. And the winning choice, of course, as you can see in the title, is simple recipes that you can make that are still budget friendly. Which actually, I think the surprising thing is that you can really make probably most recipes fit within your budget. I think
Right.
there's a lot of options. It's more of making like smarter decisions or better
For
decisions
sure.
like with buying your ingredients and things like that.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. I think
Hmm.
one of the, and to kind of go with that, I guess like the best example to really kind of jump in on that would say, instead of like, let's say you're having steak for dinner, but you really, really like steak, don't sprig for the filet mignon as much as you would love it. That's
Hmm.
gonna be really pushing
Right.
your budget, whereas you can get
Hmm.
another cut of steak and it could fit into your budget and you can still have that
Hmm.
really good steak dinner, but just without the filet mignon price.
Correct. Yeah. Well, and also I think one of the biggest areas in within being able to figure that out is also finding out what your actual budget is.
Yeah,
Because
that's
having
smart.
a set food budget, it also gives you those allowances if that was a cut of meat that you're like, okay, I'd like to do that like once a month, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, but so finding your budget is definitely a super helpful thing. But then um some of the ways that we stick to a budget are that within our recipes or our meals, we will use similar ingredients.
Yeah.
Which means that, like, let's say that we need specific vegetables, like if we needed asparagus and squash or something in one recipe, we would really try to utilize it in another meal within the week
Yeah.
so that we're not one, you're having less waste because you're like, I only need like half of this. And also, you're getting, you're not having to buy like as many different
Yeah,
ingredients.
for sure.
And that kind of also similarly goes into if you're paying more attention to like what is seasonal, then you also get
You'll get
some lower pricing on your produce and things like that.
sure, because as the
Hmm.
seasons change and as different vegetables or fruit come into season, you'll start seeing it at the stores. And it might not be like huge price drops, but at the end of the day, even
It's
just a
just a
little
little
bit
bit,
of price
yeah.
drops throughout the year really helps spread that budget.
Yeah, and we also will use so like if we're getting because another kind of trick to things is that like let's say ground beef, right? It's
Yeah,
not really a super expensive item. But the nice thing is that if you buy it in a larger amount, so like versus one pound versus like let's say 3 to 5 pounds or something like
yeah,
that, it actually goes down in price per pound.
yeah,
So a great way of keeping within your budget is like let's say that you were going to make spaghetti and meatballs or spaghetti and meat sauce, right? Utilizing that ground beef in another meal of the week
yeah,
because you can then buy a larger portion, which you're then getting to pay less per pound.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we'll do. And we also will do that with larger cuts of meats.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
if you're breaking it down, a lot of, so like for instance, if you're getting, like your example of filet mignon, right? You're also paying for the butcher to cut that.
Yeah.
But so, like, let's say you bought a whole tender, maybe not like the entire, because
Yeah,
that could be pretty
that'd be
big.
a lot.
But if you had a portion of it, you can cut that down into steaks for yourself, and that alone
Will help
will
save
help
on
save.
that budget. Also, now if you're not really looking to be able to put in all that much effort, and this is something that like we've really started getting into, even for ourselves, our family. We use a service, Butcher Box, and it might not fit into everyone's budget, and that's something that I will go ahead and start out saying first. But we figured out that it does fit into ours really nicely, and we end up getting a lot of the cuts of meat that we want for the month is like just for our home, just delivered right to us. And that could be a service that at the end of the day ends up helping you save on your monthly budget with your protein, so that way you're not spending more through the month because you already have everything at home ready to go.
Yeah. And as you might be watching and stuff, another thing that we kind of would love to know is if there's any specific meals that you're like, man, this seems like a really pricey meal, and I wish that I could figure out how to make it more on budget. Because we'd love to help you out and kind of give some ideas as to like, because we know some meals can seem like they would be a lot more expensive,
For
but
sure.
there's definitely different ways that you can adjust the recipe to get it to fit a bit more
Right.
into your budget.
So make sure you leave a comment in the chat, so that way we can end up getting an idea of what you guys may be looking for, within either, like Melissa said, getting meals that may seem expensive, more budget friendly, or even if there are like any sort of recipes that you guys are interested in seeing that you guys haven't seen, just leave some comments, and we would love to be able to, give that information to you guys as well. Now, to continue with,
Yeah, so another great zone for your meals of having recipes that you can also keep budget friendly, right? Is kind of focusing on your your plate in on some level. So it's like making it simple and not like getting those overcomplicated meals where I think we've all found recipes where it's like you need like 20 different spices that
yes,
you might have two of,
yeah,
right? So keeping it very much simple of like, okay, especially, and this is especially good if you're just starting out with meal planning. So like picking, like, let's say this week I'm going to do chicken breast and ground beef, right? Or you could do vegetarian instead. So like chicken breast and vegetarian. And so you could always create, so like having your protein, so chicken breast, and then picking out a starch, which could of course be anything from like pasta, rice, to it also could be like your sweet
potatoes, yeah,
potatoes and stuff like that. And doing something simple as like, okay, I'm going to season my chicken with some Italian spices,
right,
and then have you could do a baked sweet potato, or you could do cut it up and do roasted sweet potatoes. And the cool thing about sweet potatoes,
super versatile.
it's super versatile because you can make it sweet or savory.
Yeah, because it really encompasses a whole range of flavor profiles that you could do with it.
Yeah, and it's also a more complex carb,
Yeah,
which is nice. So you could utilize that, and then also picking specific vegetables that, one, depending on whether you have picky eaters, sometimes you don't like all the vegetables. So it's
yeah,
like, okay, what vegetables will I eat? So an easy one that we found with a lot of our clients is broccoli.
Yeah,
Lots of people
broccoli
eat broccoli.
is a pretty standard one across the board that
Hmm.
everybody eats broccoli. I think we found a very handful of people, maybe at most, that
Hmm.
really don't prefer it, and that's
Hmm.
fine. But just understanding like what you guys prefer to have,
Hmm. And
and knowing like that just is hugely helpful.
yeah, and an easy way of doing that is basically you could quickly saute some broccoli
Yeah.
with like you can easily add flavor to broccoli with just garlic,
That's
salt, pepper, very easy. Or you can always throw in some herbs,
yeah.
and you have an easy meal where you have your protein, your starch, your vegetables, and you also have color because you've got your orange from your sweet potato and you've got your green from your broccoli and stuff. So it's kind of like if you keep those simpler meals as you're like going through and then figuring out how you can add in.
Right.
And then if we're looking at like um utilizing ground beef or doing vegetarian things like that, you could do so like we were saying earlier, if you were wanting to do like a spaghetti,
Right.
or sometimes we've done like rigatoni bolognese, which you can also do both of those vegetarian and just throw in vegetable
As opposed to throwing in the
instead of
protein.
protein. And then you could always, for your next like utilization of it, make burgers.
Yeah. And that's such a big benefit right there, especially when it comes to ground beef, because it can make so many different things. Like Melissa just said, it could go from being part of a meat sauce to being burgers or being meatballs.
Mm-hmm.
It could be in your lasagna. It can be a primary ingredient in a chili,
Mm-hmm. Or you can make a soup
or you
and
can
things
make a
like
soup
that.
out of it. And it just that one ingredient, even if you get like a 3 pound pack, can really stretch into so many different areas and so many different recipes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably one of the easiest ingredients to get that most people are going
Mm-hmm.
to enjoy in some capacity, because
Mm-hmm.
ground beef, I haven't found anybody who's really like against it unless they
Well,
specifically avoid red meats.
right, and
And
there's
that's
always other ground
exactly
meat
because there's like
items,
ground turkey, ground chicken,
ground pork,
ground
those kinds of
pork.
things.
So there's versatility within that as well.
And then I know that you had a tip that was if you want to be a little bit more involved,
You
because
can
you know.
you can go and get seed packs from, let's say, like your local Home Depot or your local nursery,
Mm-hmm.
and the seed packs really aren't a huge investment, only a couple dollars here and there, depending on what you're looking at. But you can grow your own produce right from your patio.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to have a huge garden. We are fortunate that with the house we purchased, we have a nice little backyard that we could build our own garden in. But
Mm-hmm.
we know a lot of friends who've actually done patio gardens
Mm-hmm.
where they end up either taking buckets or just leave the plants in planters,
Buckets.
and they grow all of their vegetables right there, right on their
Mm-hmm.
patio
I
in buckets
I
or
was gonna say I in fact
planters.
like previously had a porch garden
Yeah,
in my apartment, so
yeah, and that's one
I'm
of the
pretty
great
sure every
things.
apartment I've had, I had like herb garden, just like tomatoes. Like you do small, like
Yeah,
it's easier to do like small vegetables, but herb
right.
gardens are really helpful because I would say that of the pricier items that you can
It's gonna
find
be your herbs.
on, yeah, because they're like about $2 a pack almost,
And
like a
they always
dollar.
come in like, maybe it's like, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's like a maybe 2 or 4 ounce pack. It's
I don't
really
even think I think
small
it's more than that, but
with the weight that they
you
give you.
well, of course, by weight, herbs like
Yeah,
it's good, but you can get a lot more use out of it if you grow your own plants.
for sure.
Because can use them over and over and over again.
Yeah, and there's some vegetables or some herbs that you can just like after purchasing the first time at the store, you can basically utilize a portion of it to regrow it. And in that case, it'd be like your green onion scallions. As long as you don't cut the white or the roots out, you can basically just put it in like a little cup of water and put it in a window where there's going to be some sunlight, and it'll grow back in a few days.
Yep.
Potatoes, those are a little bit more involved to get to grow back, but basically you can take half of potato and you can start growing potatoes right from your patio with just a half of a potato. And so like there's huge opportunities when it comes to being able to have that kind of patio garden.
Yep. So
You know what I mean? That was like one of the first things I thought of.
was potatoes.
Yeah, well, was potatoes and really just the opportunity to have that growing right there fresh.
Well, just having anything growing you can utilize for like produce and things like that is going to be a bit helpful. But
Yeah.
not it's not for everyone.
Yeah, and of course that's definitely something that like if you want to be more invested and involved in your produce and where it's coming from, then yeah, I 100% would say I'd support you stepping out and trying to grow that patio garden. But if it's something that you're just not interested in, then that's perfectly fine. Not everybody wants to do that and be that involved in their food.
Now, we hope that those of you who are watching have enjoyed this live. If you are coming back later, we would love to hear about some recipes again. If you were like, okay, this recipe seems like it would be a lot more of an expense for me to make, and it'd be cool to have some tips on how I could make it more budget friendly and stuff, because we would love to answer your questions there. And we also wanted to take a moment because we know that there have been quite a few additions to the group.
Yes.
So we would love to welcome everyone who has joined around the table. And we kind of jumped into there. I was like, oh, I was gonna do this at the beginning, but we're gonna do it at the end instead.
Yeah, and you know what? If you made it this far, we're so happy that you were watching the video, or even if it's the playback, or if you're here on the live. We're excited that you're here with us. And
if you're new to us and new to the group, we would love to know what you are excited to learn about meal planning and how we can help.
Well, we're so glad you're here and can't wait to see you guys around.